got my video. All right, I'm ready. So I'm Natalie Slater. I go by Slater. So that's why I have the N at the beginning. I have 15 years of design experience and 10 years of UX. My pronouns are they, them. But if for things that I want to get into are who I am first. And so I started in graphic design and photography. A lot of people start there. I had a professional wedding business and it was doing well, but I was doing a lot of 2 a.m. nights and just editing photos. And I was like, this is great, but I have no social life. And so I decided to pursue UX. This is my family, my partner, Josh, my dog, Ginger, and my dog, Tally. You'll see I have an injury. Tally, this one here in the bottom left, is the reason I have a broken finger. And then this is my dad and my mom. We all live in Colorado. So the first thing we're going to talk about is brainstorming, and we're going to dive in with an exercise. So get the chat up and get ready to type. We're going to do some brainstorming. But what is it? What is brainstorming? We probably all know. We do UX. Even people who don't do UX kind of have an understanding of what brainstorming is. But my favorite two things for brainstorming are bad ideas only. So it's a good kickoff for brainstorming. And then we'll get to affinity mapping in a second. But basically, brainstorming is the basic concept is there are no bad ideas. And so to kick off with bad ideas only is one of my favorite tasks, to just like get your brain going and thinking about what exactly you want to get out of your head. Because a lot of times if you don't get that bad idea out of your head, it'll just keep popping back and you're like, oh man, get out of there. And so let's say the problem that you found to solve with all your research and everything, the value statement, the problem statement is, as a bike rider, I want to be able to find my locked up bike in a major city, even if I get lost, but I can't because I'm not good at remembering directions, and that makes me frustrated. So please write in the chat some bad ideas on how to solve this problem, UX or otherwise. Or, well, we probably shouldn't all say them out loud. That probably wouldn't work. Tie a string to the bike and your wrist. Love it. Draw a map. Great. Add a GPS tracker on bike and track it using your phone. Very good. One of my team members today had one that was draw a picture of it and carry it around so that you could like hold it up to different storefronts you might have locked it in front of. Write the cross street with a Sharpie on your body. Very nice. Get a dog to track it through scent. I like it. That's a good one. So yeah, once you get all these bad ideas out, then you're kind of like, okay, all right, here we go. What are we doing now? And you don't, like, that should be funny, right? Like, we're just kind of getting the room started, starting an icebreaker. It's a really nice form of getting ideas out about the idea, but also getting to know the room. Put a foghorn on your bike with a remote control. I like it. I like also like hiring someone to just like squeeze the horn randomly just to see if like you could find it. Good, those are great. Okay, so now that we've gotten those out, one of my favorite exercises is affinity mapping. Oh, I cut up some type there. So affinity mapping is all about extracting insights and noticing those themes and then figuring out like what the groups are of those. So where do you start with affinity mapping? My camera over here. All right. So you start with alignment. So step one, overview. Y'all just did all this research and all of these surveys, and you did some gathering of information. So this step might not be like super important for you all, but if you are in a work environment, it would be important to get all the group, all the stakeholders that are in your workshop on the same page. So you would go through that research high level and create, well, let's start at number one. You would create a shareable space like a Miro doc or a Figma or a FigJam. There's lots of ways you can do it. I prefer Miro. And then align on the reason. Why are you here? I also like to align on the reason you're not here. I didn't put that on the list, but an anti-goal is always really nice because it helps people when they're like, oh, but I want to talk about this. You can say, oh, remember, that's not what we're here to talk about. So we can talk about that later. We'll put that on the list to talk about later. And that kind of keeps people on task. And then share any research or resources. So since you all just did kind of the research, I'm not sure that step totally is required, but generally it should be required. And then I just found a Miro template and linked it here. I can provide it to the person that was going to provide links later. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So what's the next step? Oh. Gather. So you're going to gather insights on what you think could solve these problems that you are trying to solve. So take 10 to 30 minutes and everyone take it on their own time. And so you set a timer and you all individually write down ideas on a sticky. I think it's important to label who wrote each sticky because once you start like grouping them, then you can kind of figure out like who, if they leave, like who might be able to speak to that idea, just to make sure you're all speaking to what is happening on the board. And then I have a quick exercise here too. So in the chat, put one of your ideas on how to solve the problem statement. These are real ideas this time. As a bike rider, I want to be able to find my locked up bike, even if I get lost in a major city, but I can't because I'm not good at directions. Set a marker in the map app. Very good. GPS tracker, like it. Bike tracker, oh yeah, like a tile. It's good. Put GPS on your bike. Very nice. Pin location. Oh, time for one more. One lucky person is going to get, there we go. Place a pin on the map and then retrace your steps with directions provided. Very nice. So all of those would go in Post-its on this Miro board separately on different Post-its. And then a lot of these have a lot of the same themes, right? So you would start grouping them by theme. And you could do that as a group. So you could read through them, all of them together out loud together. And then you could group them as you read them, or you can just go through them and then as like an async practice, you could have someone group them. I am usually the person who groups things because I'm kind of obsessively like finding themes. It's the problem. But a lot of people like to help out with these kinds of things. And so you just kind of pick a name. And then if customization, for instance, over here on the right doesn't fit anymore, you change it. And it's just very fluid. But it's important to group them by topic or theme. So once you have that, once you've brainstormed and have all these things, okay, I got a bunch of ideas that are grouped by theme. What do I do now? Okay, we're going to prioritize those. So one of my favorite ways to do that is to put it on a matrix like this. That's on the left is low effort and the top is high value. And so low effort, high value, low value. And so this helps you decide like, okay, I love the idea of take a picture of the surroundings and put it in this app I'm creating. But taking a picture is sort of high effort because I have to like use the phone and get the phone app to like talk to the camera and then I have to save it. I have to have a database. So that's a whole thing. And so, okay, maybe that's not my like lowest hanging fruit, so we say. And so what would that be? And so you would discuss how each one is placed on this matrix. Once the ideas are prioritized, then you have a pretty good idea of what feature to start on first, or even like what group of features or ideas to start with first. I do this regularly. I do it with my goals for work, like which goal is easiest to work on first. Take a Figma class. That's easy. I can do that. And so it just helps me get my brain in order, even if I'm not working on like a UX project. It also is flexible. So it's not something that you will say this is done and I'm not changing it ever again. You will get feedback and you'll say, oh man, this post-it seemed easy, but now I know things about development I didn't know before. Turns out it's pretty difficult. So I'm going to move it over here to the right to high effort, but still high value. And so these quadrants are broken up by what is the best value and also effort. So it's nice to have both of those pieces kind of weigh each other out. I also have a Miro template for that one too, although it looks different than this for some reason. All right, so we prioritize, we're ready to visualize. How do we do that? There's lots of ways to visualize. Miro has an awesome component library for wireframing that I use pretty often with my product managers and engineers. It's really nice to be able to like work with them on like how they want it to work. And then I can put my UI spin on it later. I really like to hand draw things. This is not mine, but it's beautiful. I admire people who can like take the time to like pull out their watercolors and do these really cool wireframes. It provides this finesse to presenting to stakeholders that I think is really special. But it's not required, right? Like when I look through resumes and I look through websites, like it's nice to see a hand-drawn wireframe, but if it's Miro drawn or Figma drawn or however drawn, that's totally fine. But the point of wireframing is to figure out like, oh, is this a header? Is this a button? Where's this go? How does this work? What is this flow? To figure out how you're going to end up in the end with a beautiful UI. Sometimes people think this is a silly step to like really draw out the wireframe, but I think it's really important, especially if it's a new idea, to think about like all the things a dashboard can be, or all the things a marketing page can be. I would time box it. Like I wouldn't just spend 2 weeks wireframing. I would spend like 2 hours maybe, and maybe break it up. Just because you got to get all those ideas out and make sure you got the best one. All right, prototypes, my favorite part. So there's lots of ways to prototype. We at my work do all kinds of lo-fi prototypes. They're simple, they're quick to create. We've not done paper ones in a long time because of the pandemic, but we used to do paper ones where we would sit the user down in front of the paper, and they would just look at a drawing that we made, and they would like use their hand to point and click where we wanted them to tell us what was right or wrong. And it was neat because you could get out there super fast and not have to deal with, oh, the Figma link is broken, and oh man, that link didn't go where I wanted it to. And it would just, it's so easy to do it this way. And you'll see people with the paper prototypes also have like, I don't know how to describe it, cutouts, I guess, where they'll put different modular pieces on different pages and see how those work in different places. It's a really nice guerrilla style of doing it, where you kind of just throw it in front of someone and say, what do you think? But it's not very high tech. And then you have the hi-fi. Oh yeah, on cardboard. That's awesome. I love that. Hi-fi is clearly more in Figma or in the more fancy prototype programs that actually include animations. We just use Figma at my work because we just have time. We don't have time to make really cool hi-fi prototypes like we would like to. But a hi-fi prototype is really good to show the interaction. Even if you like open Figma on your phone and you see how something opens and closes and you're like, oh, that's really awkward. Let's do that differently. It's just a really nice way to look at what would look like a final product. My only warning with hi-fi, if you're going to use it with users, is to preface that this is essentially some fancy images put together like a PowerPoint, because they'll want to click on everything and they'll be mad that they can't. And so when you get to the end and you ask like 1 out of 7, would you recommend this to other people, 7 being absolutely, they'll say no, because you can't click on everything. And so you want to make sure people understand that a high fidelity prototype isn't like real. And Figma and other apps have really made it easy to make it look finished. And so I think it's important for people to preface that at the beginning of a user test. Clickable prototypes is pretty much the same as a hi-fi, but clickable can be at different levels. Like a clickable prototype could still be wireframes if you wanted it to be. Like a balsamic style wireframe that's like sort of hand-drawn looking and has like that Comic Sans feel. You can make that clickable pretty easily. There's an app called Maze that allows you to send user tests to folks, and it can be wireframey or it can be hi-fi. And then there's the MVP. So MVP prototypes, minimum viable product. It represents the core functionality of the app. So we just built one of these for my job because we were trying to explain to our high up stakeholders like what we were asking for money for. And so we needed to show them, because we didn't have anything in production for them to actually use and click on. And so it's very helpful to explain the vision of a project. If you are they're holding their phone and they're like, I don't understand why I need an app to find a bike that I very well know I locked up on a corner. And you can like take them out into the world and actually like set it up to where you like have the prototype set up with the bike locked on the corner and like everything's very perfect. And then you explain to them in real life how it works. And that's very handy to have as a selling point. I'm used to asking for questions in the middle, but I will wait till the end. Okay, so prototyping also. So visualization we talked about. So prototyping allows you to visualize your app at any level. You can see in the image here, they're actually drawing a house, which I didn't realize when I found the photo, but that's okay. They're prototyping a house. And it's important to get those visualizations out into the world, even if you just need to sit with them with your brain. I was trying to design a visualization for financing this week, and I just had to draw it over and over because it was just a block. Like I couldn't get it done. And then one day it just clicked and I finished it. And it was one of those things where you just kind of work it out. And then it kind of comes together finally with help from other people's feedback on your visualizations. They're good for user feedback, and not just like your users, but also like your coworkers or your co-team members. Anyone is a user in my experience. So even like I work for an agriculture company, not everyone understands ag, but I can put the app in front of pretty much anyone and they can tell me whether or not the flow makes sense. They won't understand like the science part of my job, but they can tell me whether or not the button is like findable, essentially. And so that's what we use prototypes for in this case, is getting user feedback. And then time savings. So we use prototypes to put it in front of engineering and say, this is what we want to do. Can you do it? Is it feasible? So as a UXer, you're in charge. Well, product is in charge of value. We're in charge of users and their happiness. And then engineering is in charge of feasibility. And so I don't get a say really in, I want to do this very cool animation that like swooshes to the right and then comes back in and spins around, and then bam, you get your primary nav. And engineering will say no, like every time, because it's so much work. It is not feasible for them to get it done with the value that they need to give. And so showing that in a prototype, instead of like what I just did, which was verbal and like moving my hands around, they could actually get the concept if I put it in a prototype. And then it improved collaboration. So I'm working with my product manager in a Figma file, right? Well, this morning I was, and he actually made a prototype and he showed me what he was thinking because I didn't understand. And so I clicked through his prototype and I was like, oh, I get it now. Okay, so you want the design to do this. Well, I think it should do that or something slightly different. And then we kind of came back and forth on what we wanted the UX to be, because it is a conversation. It's not like me saying like in stone, this is what we're going to do. Design systems. So once you have a prototype, preferably once you have a wireframe, a design system is super helpful, even if it's really small. And it's one of those things that people start designing and they're like, oh man, it's just so much work to make a freaking design system. I don't want to do it. Like, I just want to design this thing. I beg you to take the time, because it's very, very much worth your time to make a very small design system. Like this image here even has more stuff than I would recommend. The next slide is what I recommend, but I'm going to go through it just real fast. Like things that are going to be in every screen is the way I kind of define it. The reason that I recommend it so highly is because it provides consistency to your whole team. you have multiple people on your team designing, not just here in this competition thing, but also in the real world. I have 15 designers that I manage, and they all have to design together. And so that is the reason we moved to Figma. That is the reason we have design system, is because we need our primary buttons to look the same. It is still true in this case. If you have a prototype and you're showing it to a user and it doesn't have consistent buttons, that's going to skew your user feedback. Because if one button's like squatty and little, and the next one's really big, and they find the really big one really fast, well, now you're going to say like, oh, well, all primary buttons are in the right place. And so consistency is key, is a phrase I say all the time as it relates to the design system. Efficiency. So my partner is in a front-end development boot camp. I made a design system for him because he asked me every day, he asked me today, will you design this thing for me so I can develop it? And I was like, you know what? Here are buttons and text and color and anything you might need to like throw a page together, and then I'll like tighten it up. Like that's how sort of we're working right now, just because I don't have time to design things for him at the moment. But that way he's in Figma. He's in Figma, I'm in Figma. It's efficient because he already has the design system I made, and then he can throw together his ideas, and then I can move them around to be more UX-y. It's true for any team, even if I'm designing for myself, just for a project that I'm doing on my own, it just makes me faster to hit breakpoints and just have things easier and defined. Collaboration is coming up a lot, but you will find that your job is collaboration, and it is all the time. Like communication, collaboration, those are the two things. If somebody asks me, how do I succeed at this job? Those are the two things I answer. Design systems provide collaboration because you can grab a select or an input and say, this is how I want this to go. And then someone can just keep adding to your design because you all know what an input or a select looks like. Scalability. So scalability is something people often forget about just because it's so far in the future. Like I'm designing this thing today, I don't need to worry about a year from now. So I don't really need to worry about like what a tertiary looks like, because I don't need tertiaries today. I don't need a third style of a button. I'm good. But providing these like predefined design elements and standards help make it easier to scale up. And so I wouldn't say that that's important at this very moment, but it is important to know that that's kind of how design systems work. So there's this book called Atomic Design by Brad Frost, I want to say. And he sort of defined how we design through design systems. And so it starts with molecules, atoms, templates, patterns, and pages. I may have said atoms and molecules backwards. But it's important to think about it that way because it's small and it gets bigger and bigger. And whether that's your design system or that's your design itself, like the little pieces that you make along the way, if you don't continually make that same decision, like a primary button is always blue, and then you're like, oh, well, it might be slightly lighter blue, and then it might be green. And once you start making those decisions that are more and more off course, it makes your design less consistent. So the ones that I recommend you starting with, this looks like a long list, but it is actually quite short. So buttons for sure is what I would include in your design system. Selects. So anytime you select an item from a menu. I don't know if you all are worried about mobile versus web or responsive or anything like that. But if you're gonna do a responsive app, I would be sure that you understand like what your breakpoints are so that you can be clear whenever you're talking about how it works. If y'all are just worrying about like a particular native device, I wouldn't worry about it. Icons. So I would either pick an icon library or find an icon library that you like, or if you're just really fancy and you want to make all your own icons, great. But I would make them really easy to sub out because it's so fast to be like, oh, I need an arrow here, I need a trash can there, and then you just swap it real fast. It's so simple. We use MUI, which is not a fun answer. I'm sorry. Is there any library you recommend? I recommend any library that works for you, honestly. And then the other atoms that I would include are, we use a lot of chips at my job. I don't know if y'all do, but whenever you're drawing these things out, like start making a list of things you're noticing in your design that is happening a lot. So if it doesn't repeat, don't put it in. If it repeats on every page, definitely put it in. So if you're not doing chips and they're not like a selector thing, or you don't have that, you have radio buttons instead, put those in, put radio buttons in. But I recommend, like, once you have like a wireframe, like kind of take a highlighter or take a Post-it and Miro and like mark which ones would be most useful to have in a design system. And then anything that's a style in Figma, so colors, shadows, typefaces, those are all styles. So it's just nice to have a shadow and not have to be like, oh, I have to go like remember the 5 numbers I have to put in for the shadow, or the hex for the colors. Like, it's just really handy to have those figured out now and not have to worry about everything while you're actually designing. The designers that I work with are always kind of just focusing on the UX instead of the UI, because they just pull from the design system. And that way they don't have to like worry about what color it is or what size it is. They can just focus on that. So I recommend spending the time to figure these fine-tuned details out. And I would time box it just like wireframing, like spend a couple hours on it, see how far you get, and then maybe get another team member to help, because it will provide you with the most bang for your buck, because it'll make you move faster as you get to the end of the project. I figured there would be a lot of questions, so I left a lot of time for that.
Yes, Brenda, please go ahead.
Hi, so just wondering about design system. As I understand, you basically do most when you're using high fidelity, correct?
We have a design system for low fidelity too. We just made one because people asked for it. But since Miro's tool for wireframing is essentially a design system that you can pull different buttons and whatnot from. But it isn't, I wouldn't say it's held in. It is not just hi-fi designs. It can also be low or mid. And I'll tell you why. And so the important thing for me with that is when I'm thinking and noodling on an idea, I don't want development to think it's done. And so when you have a design system, a lot of times people will see it and be like, oh, this is finished, I'll go develop it. And you're like, wait, hold on, I have questions. And so if you put a big like hand-drawn looking box, like they'll know that that's not done. And that is one of the reasons we do it. That's why we have lo-fi design library or design system.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And we have another question from Linda. Is it better to do usability testing for a low fidelity prototype or high fidelity prototype?
I wouldn't say better. I would say that you would learn something from both. So lo-fi, if I'm doing lo-fi, I need to know, are the buttons in the right place? Are the call to actions in the right place? Is the general layout of the page speaking to my user? Whereas hi-fi is like, is the data right? Do people understand that this dropdown actually opens? Like more minute details is coming from a hi-fi prototype, whereas broader concepts are coming from lo-fi prototypes. I hate someone who answers, well, it's both, but that is the answer.
Thank you, Slater. And we have another question from Faith. Do you often use to write documentation for design systems?
Yeah, that is one of my main jobs. And I was going to pull up our design system just so people could see that if they wanted to. Let me just switch screens here. But yeah, we write a lot of documentation for our design system. You're seeing a web browser now? Oh yeah, I can see what I'm seeing. Okay. So all of our documentation is written by my team, and I've helped from time to time, but like all of this like it just goes on, right? Like it is a massive project whenever you start taking it really, really far. But yeah, it is one of those things that you have to, you all, like in this project, I would not write a ton of documentation. I would probably write down things like, we agreed that it's login, one word, no space. Because those are the kinds of things you'll come back to and be like, oh, well, did we say login? Or like another word? And it's just nice to have like that documented and like, nope, login, not talking about it one more time, just one time, we wrote it down. So I would write down decisions you make about what your app will say or do, or how a menu will open, little stuff. This documentation here started as one sentence, like menus open from the bottom of the menu. And then we started growing from there. Whenever developers would ask questions, we would start writing those answers in this area. And it's just very easy to start keeping track of it once you like have one sentence written.
And we have another question from Federico. What part do you enjoy the most about the design thinking process?
I always wanted to be the idea person. So I really love like pushing an idea through and talking to users about if that idea helps them. And then if it does, I like trying to socialize that idea with my leadership or my team, and then trying to get it accomplished, like the design system. No one wanted a design system. It felt like something that would be useful to our users, being the designers and the engineers. And I just kept talking about it, kept pushing it through, and I had a whole deck. If somebody asked me about it, I would start socializing that idea. And so I really like talking to people. I really like the concept of talking to a user in their space and just figuring out what problems are they having. Can I help solve those? What is the easiest one to solve? And just coming up with those ideas. I also really love designing, but I probably only get one answer, but yeah, that's probably it.
Okay, we have another question. What was it like moving from being a UX designer to being a designer lead? How do your responsibilities change?
Sure. So I used to be a contributing designer at this job. I contributed to 3 squads work, and I don't need to share my screen, so I'll probably just stop. And it was a weird transition to go from being in stand-ups and being in planning and being in with the squad, and then suddenly managing 10 different people and 10 different design projects. So now, instead of like being the person that is making sure that the error states look right and that the developer knows what to develop, I am more in charge of, is this the vision of that work? Are we actually going to do X, Y, Z instead of A, B, C? And I get to make those decisions at a high level. And then I get to pick like, okay, who's the best person for that job? This person would probably be best. So their plate's full. What does that look like? And so just balancing all of that work. And then also, I'm not just a design lead, I'm also a manager. So I have to manage their happiness, essentially. So you sort of become a counselor, and people come to you and ask like, well, so-and-so is mad and mean to me, and what am I going to do about it? And so then you kind of have to like work through like, okay, well, why are they mean? And that is very brought down, but like it is one of those things where you're managing people, and people have feelings. You have to like figure out how to communicate with everyone. And then another one of my jobs is working with the other people at my level for engineering and product, and just making sure that their folks are talking to my folks, and there's a lot of communication and collaboration. So those 2 things are the 2 things that I would say are the biggest parts of well, they were a big part of my job before too, but go ahead. What's next?
Okay, the next question is from Alexandra. Is this the Bonsai service you're using? The website
Oh,
that you are
our design system is called Bonsai. So it's made in zero height, which is essentially a square space for design systems. But it is not a service. It's just a design system.
So any more questions for Slater? Okay, we have another one. How would you go about showing and presenting prototype for multi-device solution? For example, you interact on the phone like a remote, but response is on TV. Could you do one action on phone and next is on watch or audio play?
Well, you would need multiple prototypes. So I've never done what you're asking, but how I would probably do it is you would have a prototype for the phone and you would have a prototype for the TV or the watch. I don't know how you would get a prototype on a TV, but I bet I could figure it out if I really tried. You probably have to hook up a computer to it maybe, but you'd have to have a second person controlling the second prototype. Just to like act like it was working. And I would probably just explain to the user that that's just how it is, or I would have them just be a part of that imagination. Like users, if they're helping you with a complicated thing like that, they are excited about whatever you're doing and they're happy to have imagination. And so if you have a button on your phone and you're like, okay, now when you press this button, imagine it does this on your watch. Like in my company, we had to get them to imagine that a button controlled a tractor, and tractors have self-drive. So I can't make a tractor self-drive. I can just like get them to imagine it. So yeah, I would either finagle it with two prototypes or I would just ask them to imagine it. Nice.
Any other question?
I have a question.
Okay.
I was wondering, how does a team go about deciding what's necessary? Because it sounds like this is like a design system is something that's just living and breathing and growing. So how do you go? Because I've seen some of them that have like mission statements when I've looked at some design systems. So how do you go about deciding how big you should go, especially when you're just one person working on a project on your own? How do you determine what you should and shouldn't include?
Sure. How I determine it, one of our rules is if it's not used 3 times in the UI, it is not a design system component. And the thing with a design system is it can start to make you feel like handcuffed to it. And you're like, oh, well, I did a table like that one time, but I kind of need it to be slightly different, but I already have it in the system. So I guess I'm going to have to do it that way. And so if you don't have it, if it's not reusable, it's not in the system. And so I would use that prioritization chart, honestly. That's like highest value, lowest effort, button, super high value, super low effort. But like a table, like a big table is super, super high value, but very high effort. And so like I would start prioritizing those on the Post-it board. And then you kind of have a handful of stuff. Like we have a whole backlog of things that we have to fix in our design system that is ongoing forever. And it doesn't ever feel like it will end. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. The other thing is I would look at like somebody, I feel like somebody listed Airbnb in the chat, and like another person's design system, they do a pretty good job at like prioritizing like what is important. Google does a nice job at the MUI library of like, these are the bare minimum things we needed. But, and also just like articles on the internet will be like bare minimum design system would include these 10 things. But yeah, if it's not repeated in your UI, that's kind of why I was saying like, go through your prototype and be like, oh, I have buttons for sure. I have popovers for sure. I have modals. I have sheets, but I don't have any tables, so I don't need that. Like that kind of thing. And it's always okay to go back, right? Like if you do start repeating, like we started using a carousel, like a carouseling images, like one person started using it, not in the design system. Everyone started using it like last week. And we were like, oh, so wait, maybe it should be in the design system. So it's always okay to be like, oh, okay, this works here. Now it's in the system. So it's not a, hard, fast line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dexter, we have one more question.
Yeah. Thoughts on prioritization of ideas or features? How does information architecture play into this? I am a real one-trick pony when it comes to prioritization. I really love that matrix. But basically, how does this come into information architecture? So I think I need more information because if your ideas are like, I want to have home and about and something else, like, is that the kind of IT or IA we're talking about? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So when it comes to like picking primary navs, I do a lot of bucket testing. Even if it's just me, like listing out all the things I want to have in my app and then like categorizing those, which I guess you could call affinity mapping. And so you would group them and then name it and group it and name it. And you can do an open card sort or a closed card sort. And that's sort of how you would do an IA exercise like that. And you could put it in front of, we use Trello for it, where we just name the titles. And then we'll have a user like go through and put the items in where they think they should. And then the closed or the open would be, they have no titles and they just group them on their own. And then they title them themselves. But you could just do it within your team and just group them. And then it's essentially affinity map them. And it's a really good exercise because you'll see, like, there's an exercise I did with groceries to show my team how to do it. And people put rice in a variety of places. People put bananas in a variety of places. Like, it was just nice to kind of see how people work mentally. So yeah, that's what I would say. As far as I have a tendency to overdo features, that is a problem. and MVP, like, learn how to first slice that stuff. Like, what is the most valuable thing I can give the user today? Is it this crazy complicated drag and drop and I can duplicate it and I can upload a folder or a whole folder of images versus one photo? Like, pick like the most valuable slice and check it and see if that's what actually is the most valuable and not just the thing you like, because designers tend to fall in love with their designs. I do it all the time and I've done it a long time, and it's hard to be like, oh wait, this isn't for me. This is for the user. I should not care one way or the other if they pick A or B, because it is for them, not me. So just be really hard on that. Like, and it makes your job easier if you constantly are like, what else can I remove from this to make it the best I can?
Okay, we have a question here. Do you work on anything B2B?
Yes. I guess so. I guess I do. So I don't know what else to say about that, but yes, if there's more question, you can put it in the chat. For shorter project, sorry, I'm not going to read the question.
Oh, it's okay. The question is, for shorter projects, do we need to consider building a design system?
I urge you to build a design system for this, just because not only is it good practice, but it will make you move faster, even though it feels funny, like, oh, I'm going to go make all these buttons and stuff. It feels weird to be like, oh, I'm on a timeline, I should just knock it out. And then some team member is going to say, well, our blue button should really be red. And then you're going to have to go through and change every single button color. and it's going to be a nightmare. And so I promise, at least make like a very small, tight design system that includes the colors, because someone will say, I don't like that color anymore. And then you can just change one color and it changes it all. We literally just changed our primary from green to blue, and we just finished the design system like the day they decided to do this. And I was like, oh, well, that's easy. I just change it in the styles and bam, it's all over. And it was great. It would not have been great otherwise. So I promise you should make at least a very small design system. It is worth it. I had something else to say about that. Oh, sorry. Also, when you interview for jobs, they will ask you, do you have experience with design systems and working with them? Because they are so very popular right now. And you will be able to say, yes, I have this experience making one and working with one. And that is a lot. Like it is, you learn a lot doing that.
Yeah, can I continue to the question?
Sure.
Yeah, it's like if I work with the small project, like sometimes I just think about the UI kits. Yeah,
Sorry.
because sometimes I think about to create a UI kit instead of the design system, because like we have a very short time to build it. So do you think it is okay to have the UI kit instead of building a big design system or the more one?
Well, a UI kit will turn into a design system. Like a UI kit, it just doesn't have the written rules. And so you could start however you'd like. I'm not saying you should write a ton of documentation. I'm just saying you should be able to swap things out easily. Yeah. But like I would write the little things, like we agreed that it is sign in, not login. And so you have consistent language through the app too, because you do have other people designing in this situation.
So do you know any position just for the designer to build a design system?
You can just do it in Figma.
No, I mean the job position.
Oh, do I? No, I don't have one at this time. And I would say that they're pretty rare lately. But yeah, it is. I have 3 people on the design system right now, but if anyone ever goes, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Thank you, Slater.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here. What skills do you look for in a beginner UX UI designer? And also how important it is to learn front-end coding, if at all?
And how important, sorry, I can't find this question.
How important? Yeah.
Go ahead.
And how important it is to learn front-end coding, if at all?
Oh, front-end coding. Okay. So this question varies, right? It depends on if you're in a startup, if you're in a big company. My company is like having a startup within a giant corporate animal that is we are agile, but the corporate company is not. And so we don't do coding. Our designers don't code. And they're basically not allowed to. Like they do, but they're not like supposed to. So I would say that like if you're really wanting to be in an environment where you code, be good at it. Because I have tried to be that person that's a unicorn that can code and design really well. I can design very well. I can code very poorly. And so anyone who's asking you to do both should know that like one of those things won't be the best, because it's just a two-sided coin. Like my partner and I are very different. He is a QA, like a quality assurance brain that like can do Java, and I am a design brain that will notice that pixel is off by a pixel and I need it to be fixed now. And I just can't code. And I tried. I took 2 boot camps for it, and I just can't. So don't feel like you have to fit into that frame. Like if I see tons of job descriptions that are like, it'd be great if you could code, that's fine. Move on. Don't do it unless you love it, and then do what you love. And then what skills do I look for in a beginner UX UI? So curiosity is my number one. Like, you can't teach curiosity. You can't teach someone who's always like wondering and like thinking about a problem from all sides and like trying to understand something to its fullest. I can't teach that. I can't teach good communication. I need people to be able to see their whole team and then who is beyond that team. Who else needs to know about this besides these 5 people I work with every day? Communication. I can't teach collaboration. If you're one of those people that sits in you like to design by yourself and you like to have your headphones on, you will not last at my job. There are places that you would do great, but I need someone who can like collaborate and design together and pair design. That is not true everywhere. It is true where I work. So if you are one of those folks that like really likes to jam out and design all day long by yourself, you got to be sure that you find that place, because it sucks when you're in the wrong place, right? Like, you're not just interviewing, I'm sorry, you are, the person talking to you is not just interviewing you. You should be interviewing them and asking like, is this a good fit for me? Because I don't want my team to hate their job. And so you got to find the place that is good for you. And I know that sounds like a really hard thing to do, and it is, but just remember that like every job you apply for is that chance. And so you only get one every few years. And so like, stick out for it. Like, it's worth it. I know I kind of went on a soapbox on that one, but it is important. The soft skills are the things I look for because I can't teach them. Listening skills, those kinds of things that you hear in the videos that are just like, be good at listening, actually be good at it. And be good at answering questions. When I ask, tell me about a time that you had to deal with a coworker that you didn't get along with. If you go on in circles and don't answer my question, I'm not going to hire you, because I need someone who can get to the point in 3 sentences. And if they can't with that simple question, they can't with design. And so be able to communicate.
Yeah, that's true. And even I have seen like in current scenario, like there are many opportunities for UX designer, UI UX designer, for like all these aspiring engineer people. Design is kind of an essential part for all UX jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that way, like only research and ideation will work, but design is essential to learn, and you will get the project to work on the UI part as well. So learn on UI skills also. I have seen many of our mentees and many of our like UXers who get the job, who know how to do a research, how to drop the questions and things like that. But when they get the UI project, they are stuck out there. They don't know how to create the UI elements also. Design system is somewhere else. They don't know about those areas, how to work on the responsive web designs and things like that. So sharpen on those skills as well for all the people, I would suggest. Yeah, which is very important.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Great. Slater, it was really very amazing presentation that you have presented. Like each and everything, like after define like how you can go ahead with affinity mapping, grouping them, prioritizing them, which is very important, and all the design things, amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank
great.
you.
Yeah. Nice. Yes, Slater, you are the best. Yes, you are the best.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, and I really feel you, because like my background is from graphic design. I have done my bachelor's in graphic design. Then I started my work, and then slowly I moved to UI, UX, and UI specialist and things like that. Now I'm managing my teams, but I have that thing in me, in my it's like I really like design. I really want that pixel perfect thing. But sometimes we used to do that. We can't force anyone to do that. So I can feel that. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. We just made a document today of all the things that were wrong with this one page. And we were like, when are we going to get these fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nice. It was really nice. Like even all the questions you answer, everything is like real experiences that everyone has received today. So great. Thank you, Slater.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we are good, right? We will be sharing the Miro link also with everyone. Feel free to share with us, and we'll be sharing the recording as well on our UXD channel. So, anyone has any question before we log off for the day? Are we ready for the ideation phase now? Yes, I guess. Let's see. Great. Nice. I would like to see design system for this project. If you would like, if you will get a chance, feel free to create. It's a great opportunity.
I agree.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Slater, and thanks everyone for joining this event. See you next Thursday, and all the very best for this phase. Okay. See ya. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See ya.